Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We thank God for another beautiful day with our virtual lecture series. Today's topic will focus on the history of English in Nigeria today. The history of the English language in Nigeria today. We'll just do a brief overview since it's an online platform. When we talk about the place of English in Nigeria, socio-political and cultural discourse today, it's no gainsaying that the English language plays a key role in virtually every aspect of our daily engagement, our experiences, our encounters, and our social situations. Because the English language is now, the colonial language is now tied to whatever we want to achieve and how we achieve it. In the light of this, I want us to discuss the history of how English, the language of a colonial master, became one of the pivotal linguistic medium through which we express ourselves. Even today, we have children whose first language is English. And you may be wondering, how come the English language has gained so much prominence and pedigree among a people with over 540 different languages, that a single language can now take the place of all these, can now unseat all these other languages. Today's discussion is going to be very interesting, and I want you to sit back, get your pen ready, and make some jottings. Now, the historical development of the English language in Nigeria is linked to three key factors. Number one, trade expedition. Number two, missionary adventurism. And number three, the colonial experience. I take it again. Number one, trade expedition. Number two, missionary adventurism. And number three, colonial experience. To begin with, let us look at trade expedition, how it has contributed to the emergence and utilization of the English language in Nigeria today. So much so that the English language has gained global and local acceptability. Historically, the presence of the English language dates back to the early incursion or invasion, so to speak. I choose the word invasion carefully, of European merchants who, in search of raw materials for their industries in their own countries, arrived on the continent of Africa. The primary reason for coming to Africa was trade. Was trade and sourcing for raw materials to boost their upcoming industry. Because they found this continent, or the black continent, economically tempting to explore, particularly with the abundant availability of human, mineral, and natural resources. So this economic exploration by these Europeans who had come to a strange land required communication with the natives of Africa. So since Europeans could not understand and communicate using African languages, one of the European languages then, English, looking at the region of West African region, was introduced as a medium of communication between the foreigners and the natives. So the English language was not freely used in the early days of European contact with African natives, particularly Nigerians Ghanaians, and the Kenyans. Besides, a number of the natives were taken away to England during the era of slave trade as slaves or interpreters. So it should be so the primary reason for coming to the continent of Africa was purely trade and search for raw materials to power their industries and and transform these raw materials into finished products to be used by the white man and the citizens and others in the far away land. So their coming to the continent of Africa gave them a sort of an eye opening that this land is so rich, so blessed, that they were so tempted to be taken from Africa back to their own countries to transform those raw materials and mineral resources exploited from the soil of Africa back to their own country through the waiting ship. So getting back, after some time, they now saw that, okay, these people, by the time they had gone back to their continent, to their native land, Britain, Portugal, whatever, Germany and United States, they now realize that coming back some years later, they still find that this raw material that they are taking away had even doubled by the time they come back to the same spot from where they picked the first set. So this became intriguing and surprising to these people that these black people are so rich, so blessed by God with raw materials that they need. So many of the so along the line, of course, the white man became so enticed. So what we have in Africa invited or drew the attention or captured the attention of the white man to come back to Africa. So their visitation to the soil of Africa became frequent just because of the raw materials and the mineral resources. So by the time they came, of course, they couldn't have just gone to the backyard or a particular locality or community in which some of these raw materials are. They needed to liaise with some of the political heads of these communities. So these communities, the heads that they were able to interact with, there was a problem of communication gap. So this communication gap led to what we then know as trade by barter. When they approached some of these local heads, they brought whiskey, alcohol, mirror, and some funny items that they had come with from their foreign country in exchange for raw materials at the backyard of this and within the locality of these heads. Whether if it was a Yoruba land, they would go to the Oba's palace and talk to the Oba. Okay, true or true by barter. Okay, then if it were to be in the north, they will talk to the Sultan or the Emir. If it were to be in the southeastern part, because of the egalitarian system being operated in the eastern part, there were what they call council of elders who decide whatever happened among their people. So they were able to penetrate the southeastern part too, and succeeded in taking what they wanted and left the continent back to their own countries, just to be able to make different. They took away so many things. Mention it: cocoa, rubber plantation, groundnuts. Mention it: gold, bitumen, and raw gold, bitumen, crude oil, and everything. Even I think it was even before the discovery of crude oil. So it became an inviting environment a resourceful environment in which the white man can explore and exploit. So trade expedition actually exposed the white man to the continent of Africa, because it was the industrial age where most of these white men had to travel by ship to different continents, to the Asian part, to the African part, to the African continent, the Asian continent, the other areas, just anywhere they can find raw materials. But fortunately for them, when they came to the continent of black people, that as they call it, they were so amazed to have seen with what they saw, and they kept going and coming back, using the word they call trade by barter. Secondly is missionary adventurism. These traders, these European merchants, when they went back, they gave a report of what they saw in the land of Africa as people who are idolaters or who are worshippers of idols. Of course, from inception, Africans have their own deities and gods that they pay obedience to, that they pay homage to, just like the white man had his own god too. Okay, so these trade merchants, getting back to their own countries, had to talk about their experiences when they had visited Africa, and that experiences spur up some evangelists, some pastors that came together to come back to evangelize and convert people living in the continent of darkness. So with this mindset, the white man came to Africa with the mindset of what? Converting people in the dark. How can somebody be worshiping Osun spring, and that's the flowing river? How can you say you are worshiping iron? How can you say you are worshiping Amadioha? How can you say you are worshiping Kenga, a small wooden idol? How can you say you believe so much in the power of Ogun, the god of iron? So all of these things sounded strange in the ears of the pastors and the evangelists. So with that, they came with the ship together with the trade merchant on their return trip, on their return voyage, getting back to Africa. So these missionaries now began to enter the continent of Africa with the mindset of converting these people these people living in darkness, to bring them to the light of God. So missionary activities in the 19th century also played a crucial role in the implantation of the English language in Nigeria. The influx of these missionaries into Nigeria, particularly Lagos, Abeokuta, and Calabar, was purely for the purpose of evangelism and Bible teaching. Evangelism and Bible teaching. So the missionaries then built churches and established schools in their attempts to spread ostensibly the gospel of Christ to pagans. In the schools established by these missionaries, English was introduced as the language of instruction to children and adults who could afford not to go to farm and attend the schools. Besides, English was not only a language of instruction, it was also taught as a subject to the pupils. In the churches, for instance, English was the language of preachers who spoke through native interpreters. So some of the freed slaves, some of these interpreters, when it was time for the missionaries and the pastors to return to the country, maybe after some of them had sicknesses or after their tenure had expired, they had to go back. When they were going back, they went back to some of the native interpreters who had some considerable level of improvement in the use of English, even though it was not as perfect as the white man, and went back to England for further education. So some years later, some of these slaves, some of them, when they got there, they learned how to speak and write English, with the intention of coming back to interpret what the Bible says to the local people. So by the time they came back, they also became evangelists, pastors, and teachers of the Bible. And all of these were done using the English language. So the presence of this ex-slave, when they returned, maybe like 5 or 7 or 10 years later, they returned to their country, their respective land, people. The presence of these ex-slaves aided and sufficiently the effort of the white missionaries to spread Christianity and the English language in Nigeria. So today, English is the language of Christianity, as several churches conduct their religious services and programs in English with little regard for indigenous languages. Last but not the least is the colonial experience. Now, these European merchants who had been coming to the continent of Africa and return home with the amount of resources they need. At a point, they now realize that why are we going back and forth? Why not go and establish our presence in the midst of these people and make them and build their government and colonize them? This is what led to the scramble of Africa. For those of you who did history, in which different European countries with superior weapons against our warriors in Africa came forcefully to impose their government on the natives of Africa. At the end of the day, they succeeded in suppressing the will of the people, because some of this decision didn't sit well with some Africans who ended up revolting against the government of the white man. How can you come to our land from a foreign country, from a faraway country? We don't even know your culture, we don't know what you believe in, and you displace our government, our Albas, our emirs, and say you want to establish your own court system, and you want to establish your own judicial system and your own local authority. And you now suppress the Albas to become the second in authority to you. So it became a tug of war between the incoming white missionaries and the established local authorities. Some Albas that did not accept the authority of the white man were exiled. Some were even killed. Some were jailed. A lot of terrible things, just because the white man saw a land flowing with milk and honey and wanted to take over the land, and they succeeded by coming with weapons. Some natives even tried forcefully to fight against the presence of the white man in their land, but some people are just funny, betrayed their own people, taking side with the white man, and the white man succeeded in establishing his presence in Africa, and that was what led to colonialism today. So following the era of missionary adventurism, this was what led to the scramble of Africa, because it took place in the late 19th century, between 1870s or thereabout precisely. Now, this colonialism was spurred up by the vast human and mineral resources in Africa. Okay, some European superpowers, for example, scrambled for selected areas in Africa. The Portuguese had their own court. The Britons had their own side. The French had their own share. So, and before you know it, the whole continent of Africa had been divided into different parts under different authorities, and that's why we have different communities in Africa today under the authority of the colonial masters. Those that were colonized by Britain, they call them the Anglophone countries. These are English-speaking countries. Those that were colonized by the Portuguese, they were of course. So they and the French people were colonized. They were called the Francophone countries. All of these are in an attempt by the white man to ensure that the resources, the mass resources in Africa, both the human and the mineral resources, are under the care and watch and control of the British and and the French imperialists. So with the British, with the European armies used sophisticated weapons that were superior to that of the Africans, as a way of suppressing the Africans to accept their government. And this, of course, with the British, for example, in authority over Nigeria, English became the language of the colonial masters, and it gained supremacy in the country. So educational policies in Nigeria also encourage the teaching of English in schools as a subject. Now, during the colonial period, I'm sure you have heard about the Latin Constitution, you have heard about the Macpherson Constitution, the Richard Constitution. There were different governments and different constitution amendments to the Constitution. All of this was in an attempt to ensure that Nigeria was under the total control of the British government. So all of these different governments will come with their own constitution, making adjustment to the previous one, just because they wanted to give supremacy to the English language, both in the north and in the south. So besides, over time, Nigerian government also when the nation was given independence. So by that time, we had gained some sufficient knowledge in the use of the English language, making it an official language in Nigeria. So today, educational policies in Nigeria also encourage, even our policies by the independent government, the civilian government, was also done in the English language. We also teach English as a subject in school. So the English serves both official language in Nigeria through government consistent policies that favor the English language far above our indigenous languages. So, for example, the official status given to the English language in Nigeria began with the 1954 Richard Constitution. That's 6 years before our independence, which provided a legal framework for the use and the endorsement of the English language as a medium of official communication. Now, what are the functions of the English language in Nigeria today? I'll quickly run over them. Nigeria, of course, we all know that is a multilingual nation with over 400 languages in the country, spread across the country. Now, given the multilingual nature of Nigeria, English therefore became a unifying language among the diverse people. So this is one of the reasons that the Nigerian government granted an official status to the English language. So it would have been difficult for Nigerians to cope with the explosion of technology in this 21st century without the English language. So that is the upside of the use of English in Nigeria today. So, since the English is the official language in Nigeria, Nigerians therefore use the language for different official purposes. Consequently, English is the language of communication in law, research, science and technology, religion, politics, sports, commerce and industry, education, legislation, mass media, and others. Now, let us take a few examples. English is the language of commerce and industry because commerce and industry is pivotal to the growth of Nigeria's economy. So, given the significance of this sector to the nation's economy, all business transactions are all written, recorded, and reported in English by the practitioners. When meetings, seminars, conferences, symposiums, workshops are organized by those in the industry, these periodic events are conducted in English. Even activities of international trade, imports and exports, and signing of international treaties are all conducted in English. Also, English is the language of communication during trade fairs and project exhibitions, locally and internationally. So let us look at the place of English in the media, in the mass media. The media play a very significant role in the advancement of our democratic society. So the media inform, entertain, and educate the public on events happening at the moment or that took place in the past. Now, they also keep the public abreast of government programs, policies, and activities. Now, they entertain the public, especially with music, movies, and sporting events. Due to the capacity to reach wider audience across the nation, English now becomes the preferred medium of communication for media practitioners. For example, news reportage on television and radio, even bloggings, online media are routinely conducted in the English language. News stories and breaking news are broadcast on broadcast stations, and newspaper headlines are reported in English. Similarly, newsprint such as newspapers, periodic journals, magazines, bulletins, newsletters are published in English. So press associations such as the Nigerian Union of Journalism, Nigerian Guild of Editors, Newspaper Proprietors Association, and other media agencies in Nigeria conduct and report their activities in English. Let's look at the place of English in law, in the practice of law. Of course, English is the language of law practice in Nigeria today. Every legal drafting is compiled and documented in English. Since disputes are part of our everyday lives, court decisions are pronounced in English. Also, court proceedings are also communicated in English. The provisions in the Nigerian Constitution are written in English. So, adjudication of justice is also administered by a presiding judge in English. So, the interpretation of legal documents by any members of the judiciary is usually done in English. Annual general meetings by professionals are conducted in English. Legal education and bar examinations in law schools are also conducted in English. Let's also look at the place of English in the language in science and technology. Of course, science and technology has transformed the human world, including Nigeria, from a primitive state to a more sophisticated state. Since English is the official language in Nigeria, since English is the official language in Nigeria, it has become the language of science and technology. The advancement and gradual spread of science and technology is possible in Nigeria today due to the use of the English language. For example, most technological discoveries, scientific terms, and operational methods are documented and reported in English. Scientific investigations are carried out and recorded and reported by scientists using English. Innovations in science and technology are also documented in English. Let's move further to look at the place of English in education in Nigeria today. Education is the bedrock of modernization, no doubt about that. In Nigeria, English is the language of instructions from preschool stage to tertiary educational stage. English is also offered as a subject in Nigerian schools. A pass in English is also one of the requirements for gaining admission into tertiary education institutions. Moreover, government educational policies mandate that English should be offered by students as a general course in higher institutions. So that is why it's one of the compulsory courses in higher institutions today. You have to do GNS 101 or what you call GST 101, use of English. Even those of us that studied English in the university, we see the use of English as a general study, as a course in general studies. Let us look at the place of English in government and politics. Of course, English is the language of government in Nigeria today, both at the federal, state, and local governments. In other words, government officials or public institutions relate with Nigerians using the English language. Similarly, the Nigerian government relates with foreign governments in English. And annual budgets of the government are oftentimes compiled and read in English. Government activities, programs, and decisions are communicated to the public in English. Nationwide address by the president or state address by the state governors are oftentimes delivered in English. Similarly, state governors address their people in the state in English. So the legislature, that is members of the National Assembly and State House of Assembly, hold their meetings, enact laws, and promulgate laws in the English language. Lastly, let us look at the place of English in the research. Research is critical to national development. English is the language used during trainings and research conferences in Nigeria. Research proposals, grants or grants in aid are recorded in English. Activities of all research agencies, education or politics or security in Nigeria are conducted and reported in English. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, I want to believe that I've succeeded in explaining to you how the English language we use in Nigeria today gain prominence and supremacy over Nigeria's indigenous languages. So it's a blessing to us as well, because the presence of the English language in Nigeria is a blessing to us as a nation, because of these functions that it plays for us at different spheres of our lives. Thank you for listening to this video. I want to encourage you also to subscribe, share and make comments on this video. Thank you, and you can also drop your questions or your observations or your comments in the comment section. So take care. Bye.